So my name is Pravesh Kumar and I'm the Artistic Director of Rifco Arts.
And you were born in?
I was born in Slough in England and I've moved back there recently, so I still live there.
And you are?
I'm Bryan Savery and I was born in Essex.
And you're executive?
And I'm the Executive Director of Rifco Arts and have been in post now for about 6 months.
So how did you two get together within the South Asian theatre world?
Well, I knew Bryan from many years ago from when I was an actor. I was in Tamasha's show 14 Songs and Bryan was then General Manager?
I was, General Manager then. I started off at Tamasha as administrator. I was brought in and I very quickly moved up into General Manager position, and then later when I left I was Executive Director for Tamasha.
So I knew Bryan for many years and I know that he'd been working in many other capacities as well. And at Rifco, you know, we've had some amazing success over the last few years, and you know, it was time to grow, and I was looking for a business partner, you know, who knew the business models, who knew the work, who knows the environment very well. And you know, when we started talking, we talked for about a year or so before we actually, you know, so and now we're partners at Rifco Arts.
And Bryan, previously you were with Tamasha, and also what's your history of South Asian?
South Asian theatre, well, Asian theatre I suppose I started at Tamasha as I say as administrator, working with Christine and Sudha, and the executive director then was due to come into post, but she didn't join the company, so therefore they had to step everybody up, so I moved up into General Manager position, and I learnt the role very quickly. And we were talking about when I was about 21,
12.
22, yes, 12, of course, 12, yes, so that was my first kind of experience. They just had a big hit with East is East as well. They've been at the Royal Court, had the film out and things. So it was a pretty exciting time for the company and a pretty exciting time for me in my career. So I was with Tamasha for about 6 years in total, I think it was. I left Tamasha to go and join the Almeida Theatre. I took a sabbatical from Tamasha. Then from the Almeida I went to the Hampstead Theatre, where I reconnected back again with Tamasha and produced a couple of their works at the theatre. So I brought back A Fine Balance and House of Bilquis Bibi. And then I went back to Tamasha again actually and took over as interim executive there. And I also at the same time was working with a company called Peshkar, who are based in Oldham, who produce sort of work for young people. And so I kind of got to know the sort of the South Asian theatre scene from them as well. So, and then of course I'd known Pravesh for a while, and we started talking about Rifco and Rifco needing a business partner to work with, or Pravesh needing a business partner to work with, and we started talking, and I applied and interviewed and got the job.
Yeah.
And Pravesh, you started off as an actor, didn't you?
Yes, I started off as an actor because I thought that's what I wanted to do. I've actually been writing from a very young age, so I was always writing scripts and very interested in telling stories, and I thought I wanted to be an actor, but actually as I was acting I realised what I was enjoying was being backstage, and I actually moved to India for a while as well, and that's when I really fell into being behind the camera and directing. And that's where I really found my niche, and what I really enjoy is actually telling stories and making them happen.
So tell us about your Indian experience.
Sure, I mean, I did 14 songs with Tamasha. I mean, I'm kind of born out of, I would say, quite a few different other theatre companies. So I was an actor with the Tamasha Theatre Company in 14 Songs, which was my last acting job in 1998. I'd worked with Jatinder at Tara as well as an actor. And I'd also worked as an actor with Moti Roti Company as well. I was in their first production, Moti Roti Patli Chunni, with Keith Khan and Ali Zaidi. And actually, out of all of that, really kind of became my own experience of what I wanted to do. I thought it was, again, I went to India, tried out Bollywood, and realised very quickly that actually that's not really what I wanted to do. And at that time, Bollywood was at a very different stage. They were making the same film, very undercooked scripts, and I started to realise that actually my skills lay in a different place. So in 1999, I did my first theatre production, and luckily that was co-produced by the Leicester Haymarket, who are now The Curve. A group of actors got together, myself, Gurpreet Bhatti, who is now a well-known writer, Ajay Chabra, who now runs the London Mela, Harvey Verdi, who is a renowned actress and still writes for us. We all got together and we thought, well, let's try something new. Let's do something that we would like to watch and that our families might want to come and see as well. And we did a show called Airport 2000. We spent 2 weeks in a rehearsal room, mainly just laughing and rolling about on the floor. Out of that came a script and that we all co-wrote. We all performed in it, and it was very, very successful. We were quite surprised by it, to be honest with you, because we suddenly thought, these are our families in the audience, and they're people in the audience that don't normally go to the theatre. So we kind of accidentally hit on something. We hit on this new audience. And at that time, we didn't really know we'd done that. Other people told us, other theatre companies were saying, well, how come we can't get those people in the theatre? And you've managed to do that. And that's when we started to think about, hold on, how did we do this? How was this accessible to that audience? And how can we repeat that?
So that's quite interesting, because Bryan, you've worked with the other companies.
Yeah.
Did they have that problem with audiences?
They were really well received, and I remember one time at Tamasha we were at the Lyric Hammersmith. We had a show on in the main stage. We had 14 songs on the main stage, and we had a show on in the studio as well. And we ran it for 8 weeks, so we had a whole season at the Lyric Hammersmith Theatre. It's a very different type of audience, I think, that goes to Tamasha's work. But Tamasha's, it's interesting when British Asian theatre's created in both companies, essentially, that the audience is at the heart of the work when it's created. And this a sense of community, this word community, is often used within South Asian work. I know Christine often kind of would go and research the work within the community, write the piece of work, find out what the stories are within that community, and then represent them back onto stage. And so therefore those audiences, those people that have experienced it, can see their stories come to life on stage, have seen themselves and been part of the story or been part of the research process. And I know it's quite similar to the way that Rifco kind of
my
thinks.
process was born out of that process, because I was involved very early with Tamasha, and I was involved in Balti King's research. So
she sat in the Indian restaurants and the Balti restaurants in Birmingham.
So actually what happened with Rifco at a very early stage was we were also in the community, and it was seen as community theatre. And I still think it is community theatre because it relates to a community and tries to evoke something in them, and it tries to bring them still into the theatres. And again, we always go into the community when we're doing a show, when we're doing any kind of production. I don't sit in an office going, I think I'm now going to do this production. It's always with a conversation. It's always with what's happening. So it can be quite topical sometimes, and that's where the relevance comes from, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. Yeah, it is where the relevant, it often feels contemporary because it's about current issues, because the piece is being written within a community, within a community of now, in contemporary society. Therefore, you kind of end up with a story that actually reflects broadly on society as well. So not just about the South Asian experience, but what's going on in the world around it.
Exactly. And that's what we do. And that's why, we just did a show called Mummiji Presents this last weekend. And I would say at the weekend, we had 90% South Asian audience. Yeah. Which is really remarkable. And we speak and what we do is we speak to the audience. We don't just say, watch our show. I go outside, Bryan's there, our audience development officer is there, and we're all speaking to the audience, and we're collecting information, and we're having real conversations about what did you like, what didn't you like, so it's all real, and they feel part of the journey. And a lot of our audience now are really in touch with us, by social media. and that's really helped. Facebook and all these things are really in touch, and our mailing list is growing hugely. So it's a real relationship that's really kind of building over the years.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Rifco and Like Tamasha are touring companies. So we get a sense of kind of what's going on around the whole of the UK, and of course places are different. London's different to Birmingham, and yet we still get that kind of understanding by going in and talking to these audiences that are coming along to see the work that we're touring. And I think it's quite a unique position to hold within British theatre, essentially, because I think a lot of touring productions are quite often a play that's put on and sort of toured around, and the connection with the audience may be an intellectual connection, or it may be a sort of resonating with people in that region. But a sense of, when you take a Rifco show out, you get a real sense of actually how it relates to them in society and where they're living at the moment in Birmingham, kind of thing. It's not just about the kind of play itself. It's about, we get to hear these stories about what's going on in their area, and they want to tell their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just did a new production called Break the Floorboard, which we finished a few months ago. We took it to Oldham, and it was set in a place where a small town is being taken over by chicken shops. And what was really surprising is when me and the writer walked down Oldham High Street, we counted, I think, 16 chicken shops, and it felt really great to be that relevant and that truthful. Yeah.
And I think that's what makes the work accessible in a way. It's interesting how there's often kind of work, British Asian work, how accessible is it beyond a South Asian audience, essentially, and I think that's the thing that makes it accessible. I think it brings it, that's why it has a place in British theatre, I think, essentially.
Yeah, the interesting thing, of course, is that you're a child of this country, and therefore your transnational influences perhaps are a little bit different from people who are born abroad, like practitioners who have been born abroad and then come here and created work. And also, I presume you're Hindu, right?
I'm Hindu Sikh.
Sikh, right. And again, your work is very different from maybe people from the Muslim community. Would you care to kind of comment on that in terms of your own artistic journey?
Sure, of course. I mean, of course, all of my early work came from me. So it was what I knew, what I saw at home, what I saw around me. I mean, I think most artists use their environment to influence their work. But in my journey, I have lots of Muslim friends, lots of people from different places in life, and for example, in Something About Simi, there were there was a very strong Muslim influence in that, with one of the hijabi aunties, so who was my neighbour, when I was growing up for 18 years. And also, I mean, I would say that there's a strong Punjabi influence in my work, because that's what I am. But having said that, Momiji Gujarati. She speaks Gujarati during the show. In Break the Floorboards, it's about a Muslim young boy. So I'm trying to be as inclusive as I possibly can by collaborating with other artists, so that it's not just my voice. I don't want my work just to be about me and my experience. And that's why when we did Break the Floorboards, it was really important to work with a new Muslim writer, Yasmin Khan, who came in and wrote a lovely script, and we've just won an award for that. Actually, we just won.
Best live event at the Asian Media Awards.
So so it's about celebrating South Asian culture. I think that's broadly what I could say about the work. We're celebrating British South Asian culture, really, and trying to entice new audiences and theatre audiences, letting them in and letting them see our secret world, because I often hear that from non-Asian audiences that we've never seen something like this, where the fourth wall has been removed and we're let into a very different culture, and that's what our future work is looking at. We're doing a new production written by Harvey Verdi, who I set the company up with, called Happy Birthday Sunitha, and that's really a contemporary look at British Asian life now, where we're at, you know, looking at all those kind of cultural differences between the first and second generation right now, and it's really exciting for us.
But you tend to interlace your productions with song and dance, don't you? And that is very different. That's very specific to Rifco, I think. So, Bryan, how do you see that kind of a very specific characteristic compared with the other companies that you've worked with?
I suppose Rifco's position is to have a sort of entertaining approach. Not that the others don't have an entertaining approach, but I think it very much is from the camp that theatre isn't medicine, theatre's celebratory, essentially. So actually I mean, even in the mission statement, it says that the Rifco will create a piece of work with all the glitz and glamour kind of up front, essentially. And it's about actually, it's not being ashamed of that and putting it out there. And really, that's what we tour with. That's what we take out on tour, so that it's highly visual, highly entertaining, funny sometimes, you know. And it's kind of got that kind of edge to it. Tamasha has a slightly different approach. They are telling the untold stories, essentially, is what our mission statement was when I was there, essentially, was that we were looking at how the individual story illuminates a bigger picture. So, for example, East is East originally was about a very small story about a husband and wife and how she was being beaten. And it's quite a serious story, and it's a very difficult story and complex, but it was illuminating a situation that was going on at that time in that period that brought a much wider thing, and it was all about kind of immigration, of course, and migration.
But I think different artists take a different take on the same story. I mean, if I'd done that, it would have probably been very different. I mean, I would say not all of our work...
songs in it and stuff.
Well, not all of our work have got songs. I mean, I think that's what we're well known for, because Britain's Got Bangor as a musical. I think the early work did have a lot of song and dance because we were trying to entice an audience that go and see Bollywood cinema, which is always a musical. So I was trying to be accessible because what we even hear today is that when we go and see theatre, it's not accessible for us. We're not interested in it. But there are plays. I mean, what we're doing in the future is that, yes, we are doing more musicals, but we're also doing plays as well without song and dance. So there's a real balance of the work.
But it's about the artists. You say it's what links them all is South Asian, but the form doesn't have to link, essentially. And that's the thing. You wouldn't necessarily compare complicité with English touring theatre. You wouldn't say because they're white they do the same work, essentially. Because they're Asian doesn't mean they have to have the same artistic sensibility. And I think what's interesting about Asian work is that they're both, or every company nearly, is led by its founder member. You're the founder member here, Christina Sudhir, the founder members. And it's always interesting to see when that change happens. So Peshkar isn't led by its founder member. Shazad founded Peshkar, and Jim Johnson came in then as artistic, or chief exec essentially, and artistic director to change that company into a slightly different way. And it still reflects the South Asian experience and audiences, because that's who the constituent is. So therefore they reflect who they're working with, essentially. And the artists, therefore, that they bring in will reflect the people that they're working with. But you, as you're saying, you will reflect the work. You're not Muslim, but you can create a piece of work about break the floorboards, particularly from a Muslim's point of view, or a stance, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And every company is going to be different. And, we're going to be led by different artists. I think the main difference between Rifco and the other South Asian companies, I think I'm a British Asian artist. I'm born in this country. And we're from different generations as well. Tara is a different generation, Tamasha is a different generation, and I'm a different generation. And I hope there'll be other companies that will be from a different generation from me. And we're all looking at our stories from a different perspective. And I think that's what makes the work different.
I think generation is a really interesting one, and political movement throughout the UK as well. I mean, I worked with Nitro for a while, and at the time, Nitro was originally called Black Theatre Co-op. It was really important that company was called Black Theatre Co-op at the time it was founded. That was really important. And now it evolved into Nitro. It's the same with kind of coming into sort of Jatinder when he first set up Tara. There was a very particular time, and it was a very particular moment. So Tara took a very particular stance. Tamasha was next, and we have Carly and Peshkar and Rifco. It's a different sort of era when things were set up, and it reflects political change that's going on in the UK, society changing, everything kind of moving forward. And of course, each company can grow and reflect, but its founding roots when it was originally discovered is important still.
And we've deliberately kept away from being very political or religious. So every piece of work we do, we can be political, of course we can, but we do it with a softer touch, I think, because Break the Floorboards, it's very political. There's the EDL march going through it. I think that what I'm also quite aware of is that this is a relationship with an audience. This is something that, it's a journey with an audience. And I think that I'm never going to suddenly do something very edgy, very political and quite hard, because I know that audience really well. I am that audience. My mum and my sister and my friends are that audience, so I speak to them all the time. So whenever we do a piece of work, we have a steering group. We're calling them our arts ambassadors at the moment, but we speak to them. We show them the publicity of the show. We talk about the themes. So it's a constant conversation. I wouldn't say I'm completely led by them, because at the end of the day, I'm an artist and I want to, do work that somewhere I want to do as well. But it's a really delicate balance. I get some really amazing plays that we just go, Rifco, I can't do this, because it would be too far from where we are in that journey. But our next play, I think, is quite edgy.
Yeah.
It's gonna put a bit of a cat among the pigeons.
So as you're evolving as a theatre company, are you having to evolve your audience in the same way?
That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And how do you find that process in terms of its success rate or its failures, or how would you evaluate
It's very interesting, because Britain's Got Bangor had two set designs. One was a very literal set design. We had houses and shops, and everything was really drawn out for you. And then in the next set design, we decided to go we used much more theatrical conventions in it. We wanted the songs to do much more of the work, and the kind of viewers to really use their imaginations. And it was really interesting, because I learned a lot being able to compare both of those. We had a lot of complaints from some of our really core audience saying, I need the bus to look like this, and why has that door not got a letterbox? And really specific little things that I thought they would not. So it's really interesting. They are slowly moving along. But I think one thing I learned was different audiences are at a different stage. We can't expect everybody. We can't expect people that have been to theatre once or twice in their life to theatrically be in the same journey. And that's what I learned.
Yeah. There's often a debate about quality in South Asian theatre, and essentially it's whose quality are we talking about here quite often. And that's the thing that I've noticed from changing the different companies through and through, is that actually whose quality are we being judged by here? And the quality of work that we have is about the texture also that goes within it, and about the appreciation of it. Yeah. So I may not appreciate all the nuances between one Bollywood singer and another Bollywood singer. However, another audience member might, and they would recognise the quality between them both. So I think actually it's about understanding the quality and knowing how to read that quality. I think it's really crucial.
And often we get reviewers who are not our audience coming to see the work, and they have a certain stance on it, and they're usually very kind to us. But I do kind of sometimes feel, well, actually, this is not made for you. But do you get it? I'm not sure. And sometimes we have a lot of language in the work as well. So it's kind of like
where a lot of the comedy lies quite often as well. So I'm watching like Mummy G. I missed a whole section of her kind of being edgy a bit about her friend,
being quite rude about her friend.
Quite rude because her asides were in Gujarati, and so I was missing. She was speaking English out front and Gujarati to the side. So of course people, the bilingual people in the audience got that and rolling up, and I was kind of like, okay, there's something funny going on here, but I'm not getting it all, but I'm still getting it, which is fine. It's absolutely fine. It's still perfectly accessible and easy to watch.
I think there's been a big change in the way we're perceived as a company. I think in our early life we were seen as that kind of Bollywood sparkly company that do that kind of work for those people. And what's happened, I think, in the last few years is the perception has changed because our audiences are 50-50 at the moment. You know, some nights, you know, are very, very mixed and very diverse. And, you know, it's been a really interesting journey for me to see that because I used to get really offended by it, but I actually now celebrate that. And I think, well, that's what we are. We're doing, it's very clear who we're doing it for.
I remember one moment, just a small one, and probably Sudha would say this, but I remember a board meeting at Tamasha where we were worried that the audience was too white. We weren't getting enough Asian people in to watch shows after East is East was done because we were seen as this kind of company that did this sort of piece of theatre, essentially, that was purely aimed at this white audience, whatever that means. And it was just such a funny thing now. And it's such a funny thing to think about now, really, actually. That actually we're sort of saying there are integrated audiences now. They're kind of, we're third generation, do you say now? Yeah. So essentially there's a very mixed audience out there that actually need the full rounded view of the world and the society we live in.
It's very interesting because you talked about the aesthetics, really, South Asian aesthetics and whose aesthetics, whose quality.
Absolutely.
Then you're faced with a press of critics that are kind of revered and respected are mainly white middle class.
Yeah, absolutely.
For years and years and years.
Absolutely.
The broadsheets.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? What kind of challenge does it present to you?
It's quite a huge challenge.
It's a massive challenge. Yeah. You can't deal with it. It's a massive challenge.
You have to allow their opinion. And you know, I mean, look, like I said, they have always been very kind to us because I think the critics come to our shows and some of them don't get it because they're sitting there going, I don't get this show. But what they always say is, the 500 people around me are jumping up and down and absolutely loving it. So they're all getting it. So I'm obviously missing something. And that's often the review or you know.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And I think there's a sense of that there's a whole sort of Asian media press out there that are slightly ignored as well. And I think they need to, I mean, it's what the Asian Media Awards are about, essentially, is that actually the mainstream, whatever that might mean these days, white middle class sort of reviewers and things are actually dying out because they're not relevant anymore. They're not relevant to society, really. So there's a very small section of society that will read that and make a choice based on that. I mean, I now read it, and a lot of my friends will read a review of, say, of a piece of work and choose against what they're saying because of if they've been negative about it. I think, well, I need to go and see this for myself now. I don't trust that. And I think a lot of people don't trust those reviewers in that way
and
now.
most of our, to be honest, most of our audience, our core audience, don't read the reviews.
They don't read them.
So actually,
it's irrelevant to them.
Yeah. It's great to get really lovely reviews, but actually our sales don't depend on it, and our relationship with our audience doesn't depend on it.
Yeah.
I mean, East and I are always very kind, you know, about our work. So the Asian press, you know, they do get it, and I think Jatinder often comes and sees our work from Tara, and what I love about his response is that he gets the whole picture. He gets all the language work, he gets the nuances, he gets all the cultural stuff that actually somebody else, you know, a white middle class reviewer isn't going to get. He's going to miss all those things, but he gets it all, and he often is going, oh, I loved it, it was great. And it's great to have that response from someone like Jatinder.
Not all reviewers middle class, we should say.
Yes.
No.
Not all reviewers.
But I think where it becomes
mostly they are.
Where it becomes harder for us, I suppose, is the politics of running the company then. It becomes about the business then, because if people are judging you on your reviews, essentially, if they're going to fund you or do all those things, then that's when it becomes tricky. So it's not really the audiences that worry us particularly, it's actually how we then articulate that to our major funder, the Arts Council, essentially, because of course there's a large Asian audience, audience are also taxpayers.
So how do you articulate?
Well, good question. How do we articulate? I think what we do is we back up with facts. I think that you can only deal with facts, really. And we gather as much information as possible that could counteract that. So we try and invite as many sort of specialist press, as they're known, kind of Asian press, to come along and watch the shows. We ask for reviews online for people that watched it. We canvass people. We interview people after the show. We vox pop. We fill out questionnaires. We send them forms afterwards, which is possibly, again, why we're so much more proactive with our audience in a way to find out their view, because we have this sort of constant kind of having to justify what we're up to.
Yeah, because the people who get it are the audience.
Yeah.
You know.
So, and then the Arts Council learn. They're fantastic because they do fund us incredibly well, and they listen and they learn and they understand that they don't know everything.
I think the Arts Council get us now.
Yeah,
they do. I think they really do. I mean, at the beginning, I didn't think they did, but they get it. I mean, I've had some really good conversations where they've gone, actually, we get this.
Yeah.
We get this voice. We understand what it is.
They do, and they're under pressure themselves now, not wanting to move into a funding conversation, but essentially where the point of sort of South Asian theatre essentially is it's part of an ecology of the UK, and therefore actually it's represented in the cultural life of the country, and it's informed the cultural life of the country.
And and what's really important to me now in the future is to, as a grown-up artist, I suppose, is to capture as much of our lives from different parts, from different classes and different, stories as we can, because there are very few companies that are doing that, and that's why we're really looking at commissioning emerging and well-known writers and new writers. So as we do more and more work, I occasionally write a play, but I'm directing more, and we're working with writers.
And I guess being resident at Water Palace is an amazing support.
Yeah, it is
huge.
I mean, who made this decision also?
Well, Bridget came to see one of our shows in 2007 and absolutely loved it, and also loved the audience. And I remember having a coffee with her after she said, well, we've got a really big, multicultural audience around the theatre that really don't use the theatre. How can we start doing? And we started talking about it, and we spent about a year having conversations. And then she suggested, what would you think about moving in? And I was like, my God, what a great idea, for have a touring company that is resident. And I feel really privileged that, we're in such a reputable theatre, and that, automatically we have a co-production deal, for all our new work. I mean, that is a huge blessing.
Yeah, it's a huge trust from them, essentially, and a huge commitment for them wanting to build an audience with us, together. And it's about the audience, really. It's about it's about two things. It's about supporting the company.
I think it's about supporting the company
artist.
and me as an artist, because there's lots of support for me as an artist. Because as soon as you're in a building like this, it's a very, it's quite a good thing to build your house on. I mean, when I first did my first production here, I remember going, oh my God, I can just walk down to the workshop and see the set being built, and there's the costumes being made, and that had never happened before. It'd always been going down to Little Hampton to go and see where our set was, and so this is an amazing thing to have, and I feel really blessed to have it actually.
No, it's a great opportunity to work collaboratively as well. So you're testing your ideas. It's not just us two sat there working out what the business might be, or
and it's strengthened the work actually as well, because it's strengthened me as an artist. What it's done is it's given me, I've got Bridget to go and ask questions. I get to see her productions. I get to see other work that's touring here. So this building has really strengthened my voice and my artistic practice as well.
So, looking back at all your body of work, what do you think was most important, or were there any most important productions for you?
I think there's been some kind of groundbreaking moments for us. Firstly was Airport, which is the one I mentioned, where we suddenly went, hold on, there's lots of brown people here, and they've come, and oh my God, this is amazing. I think Deranged Marriage was a real moment for the company, because that was hugely successful in bringing a new audience in across the country. I don't think that theatre, the theatre kind of community got the show. It was really interesting for me because a lot of the theatre community were quite sniffy about it. but the audience was phenomenal. I mean, I think over 30,000 people saw that show, and it's still one that we get asked about, when is it coming back? And it did a huge thing for us. It really cemented a relationship with this audience. They kind of went, right, we trust you now. We've been to see 3 of your shows, now we're going to come and see the next one. That's what Deranged Marriage did. And I think what Britain's Got Bhangra did was it really kind of made us a brand, I suppose. You know, without sounding, you know, grand or conceited, I think it kind of went, this company is no longer emerging. You know, we really kind of stood on our own feet and made this wonderful musical, you know, and I'm still very proud of it. And I think that musical's still got a long life ahead of it. We're still having conversations about what it might do. I think those were the kind of 3 groundbreaking moments for us, really. And, you know, we stopped being a fluke as well then, you know. Up until then, the people have been saying, oh, it's just a fluke. But when you do that kind of work, and that audience are coming in respecting it, because that's what we're getting a lot of respect from our audiences, I think it changes the perception of the company as well.
And Bryan, for you, I mean, not necessarily just Rifco, but you know, all the companies that you worked with.
What was the changing moment?
Yeah, what did you feel was really important?
Definitely.
You can include Rifco as well.
Yeah, but absolutely.
Well,
Rifco is actually, hugely.
I'll just pinch him if he doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go with Rifco. It was what Christine saw in me, Christine from Tamasha, when I first joined as an administrator. It's a very personal thing. But yeah, she saw something in me and trained me into being a general manager, and then trained me into being an executive director. I mean, what Christine is a brilliant producer and a brilliant manager. And I think excellent at spotting talent, of course. So, but I think it's that she not only, I got an education essentially in how to work in British theatre, at the same time as understanding how to create or work with companies that are creating work in contemporary society, that are actually creating relevant theatre. So not just staging something that's been on before, but actually kind of finding what those stories are and being able to tease that out and put that on stage and taking that risk in front of lots of people, essentially. So it was interesting that also told me that they'd had this huge success with East is East, this massive kind of piece of work, followed up with a very small, intimate piece of work in a studio theatre. And I just thought that told me actually the strength of artistic work or development is crucial and the lifeblood of a company to keep it going. It's not about following the whim of success somewhere. It's actually staying very true to the original mission that you'd originally set up and how you actually run a company. So therefore, that stayed with me really strong, and is still strong here at Rifco. You know, it's actually that we're staying true as a business partner now. I feel now able to be a business partner as opposed to being an employee of a company or just working. I understand what a mission is and understand how to create a vision and work with an artist essentially who has that mission and vision, and working together, and it's about putting that forward first, and that we work under that mission. It's not above, it's above us.
So to round up, is there anything you'd like to share with us that we can
share?
Yeah, well, I think I just want to talk about the future, really. You know, I mean, the work that we've got planned is really amazing. It's all new. It's working, and it's working with emerging artists. And I think the future for us really is to find those new companies, to find those new and emerging artists, and really give them a leg up, so that there are other new companies out there. You know, they don't have to necessarily be South Asian or, you know, but we just hope there's going to be more artists out there. It's hard work being in this business. You know, it's not easy. It's hard work. You know, sometimes you have to live on bread and jam, but you know, the rewards are amazing. So that's one of our missions now, is to make high quality work, to keep telling new stories, and also to really encourage talent and give them some support.
Yeah, I think it's about the future stuff, isn't it? I think it's also about how creative work in the UK is understood as well. I think how we kind of, that there isn't just this kind of 50% sort of white work and 50% diverse work, essentially it's all mixed into one thing. I think it's actually starting to really now, I hope with the companies like Rifco, with the amount of Asian companies and the amount of black companies, they're not really known as Asian and black companies. In a way, they're actually starting to come from the artistic sensibility about where they come from and how that then gets developed. And I think it's still a way to go on that. But I think it's moving in the right direction, essentially. And I think that's the future. And Rifco, it's staying part of that as Rifco, isn't it, really? It's about creating that work out there. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us.
Yeah.